Okay, we're rolling. Hello. Welcome to Demystifying Kundalini. So I feel like this video has been brewing inside of me for so long, ready to chat with you guys about what Kundalini really means, some of the myths, rumors, and maybe misconceptions about it. And I just want to explain it to you guys, my audience, my students, my clients, because it's a huge part of my awakening and my energetic evolution. And I think that the word Kundalini can be a little bit off-putting or maybe intimidating for people, and it's really not. It's just energy, although it's not to be messed with, and we'll chat about that too. So Kundalini yoga, Kundalini practices. What is it? What the hell is it? I think that this is a big question within many communities in yoga and spirituality that haven't ever practiced or been exposed to Kundalini before. So when you hear Kundalini, and you don't know what it is or aren't really intimate with it, you probably have one of two reactions. So one of your reactions is, I don't know what the hell that is. I literally have never heard of it. Or you've heard of it and you think it might be a little bit exotic, like you've heard stories of people like, going into like psychic, spiritual fits and like convulsing or like foaming at the mouth, or awakening the sexual energy, right? Awakening that Kundalini is often thought of as awakening the sexual energy. So truly, Kundalini is not any of those things. Kundalini is not necessarily something intense or scary, although it can be. It's truly just both a concept of energy and a practice that we do to cultivate and refine that said energy. So just like my other videos on Tantra and Kriya Yoga and breathwork and everything, Kundalini is truly just an energetic concept from the yogic tradition that we can use as a tool for our awakening. And it's a very beautiful tool. Kundalini is a wonderful, strong force, an intelligent force. But we just have to work carefully with her and give her the honor, the respect, and the space that she needs to work in your body. So Kundalini Shakti, let's start with that. Kundalini at its core is a form of energy. So without getting too deep into the dynamism of Shiva Shakti energy in the universe, Kundalini or Kundalini Shakti arises from the Shakti energy within us. So underlying all of creation is the absolute field, the unmanifest field, right? This field of undifferentiated, unmanifested energy that is pure existence, pure nothingness, pure God consciousness. We look at this as Shiva, the Shiva field, unmoving, silent, still, unmanifest. So when we have Shakti come in, Shakti is this energizing, innervating force. So Shakti is that vibration of the Shiva field. Shakti arises as a wave, or is the wave that creates a dynamic, differentiated, dualistic, or relative world out of the Shiva field, out of the absolute. So Shakti is this vibrating, wave-like, feminine force of energy that creates all creation. It births all form. And Shakti is also our life force. So Shakti exists within us to make us human, to give us a consciousness, to awaken us, to make us alive, awake, moving in the world. So if you have a high amount of Shakti or life force, you're turned on, you're awake, you're moving through life with vital life force. Shakti, it can also be considered chi or ki or prana It is vital life force, and it is what is connecting you to God, to spirit, and also giving you the energy to be an animated person in this form, in this body right now. So, Shakti energy, your life force, your creative power, when you're flowing in your Shakti, you're creating, you're putting things out into the world with ease, you're living your Dharma. So Kundalini Shakti is a specific iteration of Shakti. And the Kundalini Shakti is the Shakti or energy that is released from the lower centers of the body, from the root of the body and the base of the spine, that moves upwards through all 7 chakras, unlocking each as it travels to awaken and enlighten you at the third eye and at the crown. So Kundalini meaning Kunda, meaning pit, and also it's thought of as a coil. So the pit is that it's deep, it's down here, it's potential, right? It's in the negative, not negative like bad, but not positive. It's under 0 and it's ready to grow. So Kundalini can also be thought of as a coil. Why? Because coils, when they're tightly wound, have a high amount of potential energy. And when they're released, they spring, right? And they move up with great force. So when Shakti is released from the base of the spine and the lower centers of the body, the lower chakras, upwards, it starts to make its way towards the upper centers of energy, right? The heart chakra, the throat chakra, the third eye, the crown. So Kundalini Shakti is this potential energy that every human has within them. We all have the power to be great enlightened beings. It doesn't mean that we ever reach some perfection or enlightenment, but we all have the power to overcome our blockages, overcome our limitations, and through awakening and enlightenment, come to a more powerful presence in this body, in this life, in this incarnation. So when Kundalini Shakti starts to be turned on and starts to make its way up, we begin to experience the symptoms of awakening. Kundalini Shakti moves through the chakra system. So the 7 chakra system, going from the base of the spine at the root, all the way up through the center, the heart, the throat, all the way up to the third eye. I'll go over the chakras in a different video, but just know that this central channel of energy created by the chakras is where Kundalini rises. And as this energy arises, it hits blockages at each chakra, which are lessons and traumas that you need to unblock and learn and clear before your energy can rise up further. And this is the 7 stages of awakening. The 7 stages of awakening are not specific to just the yogic philosophy. Mary Magdalene speaks of the 7 powers of the ego that you must overcome to become one with the Christ in your heart. 7 stages of awakening is found in many different religions. So as you start to turn Kundalini Shakti on, and it starts to wave upwards, up the spine, through the chakras, you will learn the lessons and clear the lessons at each level as you reach higher up towards the third eye and the crown, which are the high centers of spiritual awakening. When you have very clear perception, incredible judgment, incredible knowing, incredible connection with the divine, there's not much of a veil between you and God anymore. So when we open up the chakras and Kundalini rises, this experience can be incredibly powerful, right? Awakening isn't always fun and games and butterflies and skipping through the field of Burning Man singing Kumbaya. That sounds amazing, by the way. I want to go to Burning Man. Awakening can be painful and it can be scary. Why? Because we are facing our own demons. We are seeing the parts of ourselves that we've never wanted to see, that we pushed away from us down deep so that we didn't have to face them. So as we awaken, we start to deal with all the deep shit that we haven't dealt with. And it's disorienting as hell because all of a sudden we have a new perception of the world and we have to recalibrate to operating in the world at that level. So Kundalini awakening is a buzzword and people talk about it all the time. This is the awakening of your consciousness as you move the energy up the chakra system towards higher levels of spiritual evolution, through clearing away the blockages, through spiritually growing, through clearing away the demons or the traumas, the stuck emotions, and the limiting beliefs and conditioning at each level. And it isn't always pretty. A lot of people who have undergone a Kundalini awakening, because once you've started it, it's not likely that you're going to stop it. Once you release that energy rising up the spine, up the central channel of the body called Sushumna, you have started and turned on this flow of awakening, this flow of energy that's very hard to turn off. And as you awaken quickly, Kundalini awakening is a pretty quick process once it gets underway. You may start to have intense symptoms of awakening. So Kundalini awakening can look like heightened anxiety because your nervous system is turned on by the energy. It can look like hyper awareness, inability to sleep, because all of a sudden that Shakti inside of you is turned on. And you have the more awareness and clarity happening. You also have more awareness of your inner world, meaning you see more the things that are rising up within you, and they're not always pretty. So when you hear horror stories of people going through these crazy Kundalini awakenings and like going crazy and like starting to live on the streets, running around talking about snakes, that's probably a little bit of a fabrication. That said, Kundalini is very intense energy. And when you are starting to do Kundalini practices to turn on and awaken your Kundalini, it is imperative that you have a guide who is experienced and who knows about Kundalini energy and Kundalini practices to work with you. It is also imperative that you ground and center your energy and you integrate what comes up. So we can do Kundalini awakening practices all day, drawing the breath up to the third eye, holding, root lock, and release, spinal waving, spinal breaths. And this activates the energy. This makes the energy start to flow through us. And this is wonderful. Turning on your Kundalini, turning on that life force, accessing your true power, that goddess energy is something I recommend for all. But when you do this, please integrate, please ground. So after your Kundalini practice, please do some simple movements, some stretches, some asana, some yoga flows, maybe go on a quick run, and then eat some grounding foods. Bring yourself back down, integrate the energy. As you're practicing Kundalini practices, make sure that it's integrated. So we don't just pull the energy up to the third eye, 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 right? We do a Kundalini breath practice, and then we sit silently in meditation. And then we do a Kundalini breath practice, and then we do some asana, some movement. And then we do a Kundalini breath practice, and we get up and dance. You see where I'm going with this. Integrate, embody. Don't do it all at once. Don't bite off more than you can chew. So Kundalini, although it is really beautiful and really accessible to all, because truly it's just breath practices. There's no super, secret cult that you have to join. Kundalini practices and awakening your Kundalini should be accessible to all who sincerely inquire. What I mean by this, Kundalini practices are intense energy practices and they're deeply sacred. My Kundalini experience and awakening was transmitted to me by my teacher, who taught me the Kundalini of the ancient yogis from the Himalayas. And as I begin to work with this, I have direct access to my teachers, my guides. I learned how to ground. I was giving grounding practices. I was giving a whole lifestyle around it. And that's why I don't teach too many Kundalini practices in full on here, online. Because Kundalini yoga and the practices of turning on your Kundalini energy is intense, and it's not to be messed with, and it's not for everyone. You need to be at a certain space energetically where you're ready to start asking for Kundalini practices. And if you're resonating with me right now, if you hear this and you think, I think I'm ready, I feel this, reach out to me. Because you do not have to be incredibly awakened and incredibly enlightened and incredibly yogic to start practicing this. This can become your awakening, but there needs to be sincere inquiry. There has to be a level of initiation to Kundalini practices. And that's why I don't just teach them on YouTube, on my Instagram. I'm not going to ever come out with a self-paced Kundalini course. It will always be guided by me. That said, it's just energy. It is not some fancy, crazy, secret cult that you are allowed to be a part of. Kundalini is working with our energy. It's working with our Shakti. It's working with this life force energy and directing it upwards to awaken and open the chakras and enlighten us, right? To break through all of our knots, our energy knots, and our limitations, and our human, this human conditioning that just kind of gunks on and adds this sticky layer out around our true self. Now, Kundalini, when practiced correctly and grounded correctly, brings us great power. It brings us great perception, great knowing, great equilibrium, but also roaring, Kali, goddess of fierce intensity. And Kundalini is not to be messed with. So I beg and ask and call for anyone out there who is sharing these practices to please honor the tradition and the great responsibility it is to transmit these Kundalini practices. Kundalini cannot be understood, integrated, and embodied in a 2-hour workshop or a weekend intensive. I am still working with integrating and awakening my Kundalini. And I'm so grateful to have had the teachers and the guides that I still do to help me through this process. So please honor the depth of this energy and the depth of the canon of yogic understanding of Kundalini Shakti energy. It's very important that we acknowledge where these teachings came from, the cultures, right? And that we acknowledge the big picture, that it's not just packaging little pieces of Kundalini like awakening your sexual energy or unlocking the chakras. There is a whole contextual big picture. And it can be dangerous when we package small pieces of it because then it's not integrated. What if we just integrated the Kundalini practices themselves, packaged the Kundalini practices themselves without the integration? We'd have a bunch of people high on Kundalini running around, maybe naked in the streets, who knows? Or at Burning Man. So that said, one more thing I wanted to speak to. And this is that there's a little bit of a misconception with where Kundalini comes from and who teaches it. So many of you who have heard of Kundalini probably think of the white Tantra Kundalini with Yogi Bhajan that was taught by the master teacher Yogi Bhajan. And most Kundalini teachers out there are this Yogi Bhajan Kundalini. Yogi Bhajan actually trademarked his type of yoga as Kundalini yoga and made it his commodity. And it's okay to brand your yoga. It's all right. I have nothing to say positive or negative about Yogi Bhajan at all. But it's a bit of a misconception that Yogi Bhajan created Kundalini and that Kundalini equals Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini yoga. Kundalini at its base is a concept of energy and Shakti. Kundalini practices are simply these practices that were downloaded and developed by the ancient yogis that cultivate the upward movement of Kundalini Shakti, that cultivate an awakening of your Kundalini, that cultivate and integrate the Kundalini rising and Kundalini awakenings. So there is a ton, like countless, huge, deep, vast philosophy on Kundalini practices, Kundalini energy, that is not associated with the Kundalini yoga of Yogi Bhajan. I personally learned Kundalini practices and the science of Kundalini from my teacher in India. And he is not associated with Bhajan and that Kundalini yoga thing, school, concept. So just a reminder to step back and realize that can be a bigger picture. That said, if you are hearing this in your whole body, if you're like, wow, this is calling me, I'm ready, I am ready to awaken this energy within me and start to work with it, we can start. We can start to work with this and slowly and safely and with an integrated approach begin to cultivate some Kundalini awakening within you. This is something I mostly only offer in one-on-one mentorship. I am looking at possibly creating an intimate, small, live container for our work with Kundalini in the future. But for now, just DM me on Instagram at Kat McElveen. You can also email me, hello@katmcelveen.com. And if you're interested, send me a note, send me a message. I am so happy to share these sacred ancient teachings with all who seek. I love you so much, and I am wishing you an incredible holiday season, ease of spirit, and contentment in your heart. So much love, and Hari Om, Kat.